know we all know Ann, and she's spoken here several times before, but she is one of the most interesting and entertaining speakers I have ever heard, and that is the truth from my heart. So I think we're in for a treat. So would y'all welcome Ann Good?
What would you have to give up to be the happiest person that anyone had ever met? I can't tell you, but you know. You know the things that keep you from happiness. You know the dialogue. You know those words. I got a little happy this morning when I saw the topic that I was speaking on, alive, alert, aware. Now, Don had asked me to speak on spiritual freedom. And I noticed that was kind of funny because I said, well, at least I'm saying this is what it says here, alive, alert. It says alive, alert, awake. No, that's not it. And so, but I did notice that he was speaking on spiritual freedom. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe we should just take a recess now that everybody's already free. Maybe we could just sit here and play. Isn't that spiritual freedom? Because when we're trying to improve ourselves and fix ourselves and make ourselves different than the way we are, how we feel, change circumstances in life, we're really not free. But when we take a recess, we are free. What do we remember when we were kids and we just played? We didn't have an agenda. But as adults, we have a big, big agenda. Are you ready to wake up from the drama of being you? And wake up in to living the essence that you truly are? And maybe we do tell happy stories, but we tend to share and bond over wounds. And while this is valuable at some stage in our spirituality, there comes a time in spiritual freedom that we don't have to live in order to protect our wounded self. When you're 30, when you're 20, maybe we've got something that we're undoing and we're wiggling out of. But when we're 50, 60, and 70, do we need to orchestrate our lives around the wound and protect ourselves constantly? She's got the right answer over there. She's wagging her head this way and that way. Yeah, you know. Right, yeah, it's you, yeah. The one that knows. We all know the essence of who we are, but it's almost boring because when we live as the essence of who we are, we're not having all this drama go on. We have this awareness of this who we are, and we live in this awakened awareness, but it's like air. Turn all the air off and everybody notices it. But we're not really noticing the air unless there's a foul odor in the air. We're not noticing it. So in order to live this spiritual freedom, we need to wake up. Wake up. So we all think we're awake, and we do. We wake up. But there are different kinds and different levels of waking up that I'm going to speak to. One of the levels is waking up suddenly. I love the story of Byron Katie. She just felt really terrible about herself, and she was in a terrible marriage. And I think she had left home, and she was sleeping in an attic. And she's not even sleeping on the bed because she felt so worthless. And as she lay on the floor, no, that's what chickens do, right? Chickens lay, and people lie. I don't know. I always get that mixed up. But as she lay on the floor, a roach crawls across her face. And all of a sudden, she woke up. Whatever it was. She woke up from the terrible story of her life story and her life's drama. She woke up from the story of her, the story of Byron Katie, to the story of who she was as essence. She just woke up suddenly. And if you read Eckhart Tolle's story, he tells something different. He was suicidal, and he's sitting on a bench, and all of a sudden, he woke up. That's one kind of waking up. And some people wake up gradually. There's years of observation and moving a little this way and getting back and then moving a little bit more this way and coming back. But they're making progress. And all of a sudden, they're home. They notice, oh my gosh, I'm not who I was. But have you ever noticed when a child grows up from a little baby, if you're around them all the time, you don't see every day that they're growing. They always look right. They don't look different. But if you look at a picture back of them 2 years ago, it's like they're not the same. So we grow spiritually like that, and we don't recognize that because it's so front and center. And then some people wake up, and then they go back to sleep. So it's called remembering and forgetting. And I think a lot of people fall in the remembering and the forgetting category. But one of the false ideas that I would like to bring forth, and that is just because we have a sudden awakening and we think that it's going to be, it's going to just be roses from now on, it usually isn't. When Byron Katie had her awakening experience, she said it took her a year just to process her mother stuff. She really became aware of how much she was holding with her mother, not personally, but in her head, all the stories, all the beliefs, and all this stuff. It took her a year just to get through that. So what we think enlightenment is not what maybe enlightenment is. And thinking is also a little bit of a problem because we make up all this stuff, and then we put it in a box up here, and then we say, well, when I get to all the stuff in the box, then I've made it. And my life becomes about getting to the box, and there's something really creepy about the box because it creeps away. As we creep closer to it, it gets further away, and we just can't reach it, and then we try harder, and then it goes further. And that's the spiritual trip. In 1997, I had what I would call my fourth awakening. It was very, very powerful, and I experienced myself as enlightened, and I'm just going to use that as my word. Everybody's got their words. I was not a permanently awake master or anything, but for me, it was enlightened. And my life had been about being enlightened. My life had been about fixing myself. My life had been about making myself okay. My life had been about teaching others how to do this, and all of a sudden, it was all irrelevant. Because if my life was about making myself okay and enlightening myself, and I felt totally okay, enlivened and enlightened, there was nothing to read, there was nothing to do, I closed my church. It was like, this doesn't need to be. I'm going to close it. I don't need to do any of this. And there was a period of adjustment. But then I was able to integrate it, and I found out that it was true about enlightenment. When you get enlightenment, before enlightenment, what do? Chop wood, carry water. And after enlightenment, what do? So we have this idea that when we have this awakening that we're going to turn into something totally different and we're going to do something totally different, but we don't. So what did I do? I closed my church and I moved up here, and then within weeks I was talking to church. Well, can I come to your church and talk? Could I come to your church and talk? It was like, yeah, well, I don't want the permanent joy of having to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and so I don't think I'll have my own church. But we have an idea of what enlightenment is, and enlightenment is so subtle. This waking up, this spiritual freedom is so subtle, and it's so with us that we don't notice that it's there. I did notice, however, that what I wanted was, after waking up and then remembering and forgetting, even though I forgot, I was remembering too. Have you felt like that? Yeah. So I had forgotten, but I did know what I wanted, and I got just enamored with the idea of freedom. I want freedom. It's like, oh my God, I want freedom. Freedom from what? Well, freedom, it's like, well, okay, what kind of freedom? I mean, it's not like you got war going out in the front yard or anything, so it's an interior freedom, and it's freedom from the ego at mind. That's what I wanted. I wanted freedom from the ego at mind. I wanted freedom from being run by fear. And even though I was enlightened and I was a positive thinker and I do affirmations and all that kind of stuff, I could experience and sense that fear that ran me. I wanted freedom from me, the story of me, the personality of Ann Sermons Gillis that seemed to run everything. It's like setting me free from me. because me has a lot of categories and a lot of shoulds and a lot of stuff, and having to live up to it and be somebody. I had somebody come down. They had gotten my name from a site where I had been interviewed. They're going around the country and they're doing this interview process, and they're interviewing what's spiritually awakened people. And he was going to interview Daniel Quinn. I don't know if you know who wrote Ishmael, and then he was going to interview me. Well, immediately when something like that starts happening, I start thinking, like, I've got to be this enlightened person. Everything that goes by, I'm running through this filter of she's got to be an enlightened person. She's got to be wise, when you're speaking, and you got to say something important when you're speaking. And it was like, try not to be me when they were there, and I tried not to live up to that idea of enlightenment. But it just ran me for days. And then finally, as they left, experience was gone, and I have no idea where they got anything from what I said, but I came down from the need to be an enlightened person, and I couldn't stop it. I'd stop it for a minute. I'd really be in present. I'd really be cool. But then I had to be an enlightened person. And I want freedom from that, freedom from having to be anything that I define, which is my personality. I want freedom from needing to be busy. Have any of you ever gone on a vacation and you sat down? You're there and you're busy. Inside. There's not anything to do outside, but it seems like it's boring because we can't just stop and be present. I can remember my husband and I went on a trip to Big Bend, and had that racing going on. And have you noticed that when we have that racing going on, there's somewhat of an arc in the body? If you'll notice your body kind of is like set like this, like in a mold to go and do something. And I was like that. I mean, here we drove 11 hours in the car. We got the tent unpacked, we got the food, everything, and I'll sit down. And I looked up beside me and I saw a bird. Thank God for that bird. And I just watched that bird. And I felt so much peace and so much sanity and so much release and so much freedom, because it was no longer the story of Ann Sermons Gillis who had to pack up and write 59 things and do X and X and X before I left, but it was total peace, calmness, rest. I want freedom from criticism and judgment. We don't like being aware, because when we get aware of what we're thinking, we think, ooh, I'm really a terrible person. Look at me, I'm judging this and criticizing this and judging this and criticizing that. It doesn't matter how enlightened I get. I mean, sometimes that drops, obviously that drops, but when it's up, and it comes up a lot of times, it comes up a lot, I don't like being there in that space. But you know what? This is what I found. I'm going to give you a little peep tip, and that is everybody does that, and it's okay. Everybody, we all have this thing. It's like we kind of go around and we categorize people. When we're asleep, when we're running from our egoic mind, it's, I think they're better than I am. Maybe I can get them from them. And then we're not consciously thinking that, but at a subtle subconscious level, this is the person I want to be around. I need to know how they did this. We want to find, how did they travel so much? How did they do X? Why are they so relaxed? How did they do it? Or let's say we see other people, we say, they're not really as cool as I am. I've been in this stuff for 30 years. They're beginners. They've just been in it for like 5 years, and they don't know what they're talking about. They'll grow up, all this stuff. So we say, I'm better than them. Now, we're not consciously saying that, but we are saying that we do have some kind of judgment about that. And when we begin to wake up, when we begin to get aware, we see that in ourselves. And the thing to do is notice it without getting engaged in it, because we all do this. We have these human thinking patterns that we're acculturated to, and we just, is that a word? It's a good word, okay. Acculturated to, and we just go nuts in patterns, habitual thinking patterns. We have our own, we have cultural ones, and we do this. This is a secret that I'm going to let out, and that is that none of us are perfect. And we need to get over that need to be perfect. And people can say, oh, I used to try to be perfect. I kept my house, I don't keep my house clean and I'm really sloppy. But it's not really about the external sloppiness or stuff. It's about the internal shoulds that we have that we think we don't have because we're so enlightened now that we don't have any shoulds, but they're there. We don't know that they're there because we squash them so far down that we can't see them or feel them or experience them, but they are there. They are there. Just FYI. What do I want freedom to do? I'm going to have freedom. Look at this timesheet. Let's see. Freedom. 11 o'clock. Oh, gosh, I'm good. Oh, goodness. I'm going to speak in such power and such passion that when we leave here, we are going to be alive, awake, and aware. We're going to be alert. We are going to be passionate, and we are going to be free. Freedom to do what? Freedom to be me. Freedom to be at peace. Freedom to relax. Freedom to feel home in my skin. Freedom to watch an emotional upset without engaging in it and not involving other people. Living in spiritual freedom does not mean that we're going to not have any upsets. It means we're not going to get engaged in them. I remember a story that Gangaji told, and Gangaji is a spiritual teacher. She's a non-dualistic teacher. When you are non-dualist, you don't call yourself a teacher, but we're going to call her a teacher. So she's really cool. She has thousands of people that listen to her stuff. And one day she was driving, and a car ran into her. And she gets out of the car, and the woman has run into her. And they're taking information and everything. And she's saying, well, you ran into me. And the other woman says, no, you stopped and so. And Gangaji goes, wait a minute. You ran into me. This is true. She said, I know who you are. You're that big spiritual teacher, aren't you? And you're getting upset. When we are enlightened, it doesn't mean that we don't have emotions. She was just raising her voice, but the woman's expected to say, oh, isn't it just wonderful that we had this accident? I'm sure it was in perfect and divine order. And it's just great that we had to have this meeting. It was probably planned by somebody that you and I would meet. I wonder what the lesson in this is. Now, she said, you ran into me. Yeah, you ran into me. Sometimes I like silence. And we can just soak in the truth. Actually, that's really the only time we can. Words actually take us away from the truth. But there's not anything wrong with words. We just have to realize that words are like emotions. They're things that pass through. They're not real. Words lie. And they lie on two counts. They lie because a lot of words just are, almost everything we think doesn't matter. Chatter doesn't matter. But there are some thoughts that we can use. Let me get on track. I wanted to be free. And I had this book that I really loved, and it was called Wake Up and Roar by H.W.L. Punja or Papaji. This was Gangaji's guru. I read that book, and every sentence to me was life. Every sentence to me was light. There are certain books that just have that power to give you, it's matrikta shakti, it's the power of the word to create what it's saying, like buzz, onomatopoeia, but it's different. But so I'm reading this, but I came to this sentence and it pierced my heart and it said, you are already free. There was no equivocation. There was no saying that if you lived in the Himalayas or the Himalayas. There was no, if you live in Arunachala, at the top of the mountain that they call the embodiment of Shiva. There was no, you got to be good all the time. There was nothing. It just said, it for everyone. This sentence stood boldly, and it called to me, and it says, you are free. It didn't say in the future. It didn't say you used to be free. It didn't say if you discovered your Christ nature. It just said you are free. And it meant now. You're already free. Now, can you imagine if we had a Learjet out in the parking lot and somebody came up and said, we're going to this holy place I've heard of, this Unity of North Houston, and I've got this wonderful plane, and I've got it loaded up. We've got snacks and refreshments. And anybody that wants to go to North Houston, we're gonna put them in that plane, and we're gonna send them to North Houston. How valuable would that be? Because why? We're already at the church, the Unity of North Houston. We're already here. In terms of freedom, we are already free. We don't have to get on a plane to go anywhere. It is a journey without distance. It is a journey from here, the egoic mind, the story of me, to here, the open heart. We are free. It seems to me we go on a journey, and I'd like to describe the stages of this journey. I've identified 5 stages, but remember, these are just helpful in terms of bringing the mind to a realization and understanding that might propel it further. There is no belief system that is actual truth, because truth cannot be put in words or belief systems. Truth is a living presence. It is the radical presence. Truth is not words. Words are just substitute for truth. So I'm going to tell you what it looks like, this evolution that we have to this truth. And the first thing is an inner feeling, and it's the call. It's not the call to be a minister, it's the call to be who we are. And we feel that call. Everyone feels that call. And some of us respond to this by going on a spiritual journey. That's the second part. How do we respond? Well, we respond with a journey. But some people don't respond by going on a journey. They respond by running away from that call or trying to figure out a way to fix it. And people do that with drugs, they do that with worrying, they do that with slapping a relationship on it. They do it in many, many different ways. And that seems fairly tragic, except there's a good proviso in that, and that is that, or God's guarantee, and that is that when we get to a certain point, often that misery that we create for ourselves in this artificial application of busyness and things, we fall flat in that, and the falling creates a spark, and that spark ignites our heart, and we give up and we surrender. So we can go on this journey in 2 ways. And then some people go on the journey and they live and die and they never wake up. But that's not our business. Why? Because that's not us. And then if we start looking at other people that don't wake up, they say that it takes an ego to see one. So that's the domain we want to get out of. And that's the one I have a topic. Well, you know those people over there, they are blah, 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 blah. So that's taking us off. Those are the kind of things that we do. We gossip. We talk about other people. We get angry righteous. Those things take us away from the journey. It's like taking sleeping pills. Criticism of others is like taking sleeping pills. We just go right back to sleep. So the third thing that we understand, if we go on the spiritual journey, and we're fairly awake when we go on the spiritual journey, we discover self-determination. We are powerful. And if we understand that we're powerful, it means that we're not victims. Do you remember the first time you realized you weren't a victim? And I'm not talking about if somebody came up and robbed you and they call this person a victim. I'm talking about that we live life as if we are a victim and somebody has done something to us, and poor me, I'm talking about that kind of victim, and we find out, because it's such a popular dialogue, nobody really questions it. We just think it's normal and let's just do it that way. But all of a sudden we wake up and it's like, I am powerful, I'm not a victim. Whoopee, oh my gosh. What can this do to my life when I found out this new kind of information? It's mind-blowing. We begin to relate to people and circumstances in different ways when we find out that we're not victims. Oh, it wasn't them. Whoops, it wasn't them. Whoops, it was me. So we go on this exploration, and in this exploration, we learn to choose. We find out that we have choices. What we thought we had as a choice was just a pre-recorded message from the past. We thought we were at choice, but we were just choosing what we knew that were patterns. Like, I bought a Cadillac in, 1985 or something. I felt so like I had broken free of my patterns because I felt so poverty-stricken that I bought this Eldorado Cadillac. Then I would just be so wonderful and I'd be breaking free with my patterns. Well, it didn't dawn on me until later is that my dad drove a Cadillac and my mother drove a white luxury car that had the same color interior. So here I thought I was making this wonderful choice and being so free and getting out of the poverty consciousness. And it was like, I just did the same thing. I wasn't at choice. I was at pattern. I let my hair grow out. Oh, I feel like I should let my hair grow out and not use color on it and everything. Isn't it wonderful? Well, I looked at a picture of my mother and found out that she let her hair grow out the same year that I let my hair grow out. And so we think that we are making all these free choices. Oh, I'm going to be such a cool, involved being, and I don't have my parents' stuff at all. And so we explore and we wake up to those patterns. We learn how to set boundaries. We fall in love with no. We learn to forgive ourselves for the past. We learn how to forgive others. We move past familiar limits. We expect good. We choose life-affirming thoughts over life-denying thoughts. We learn this in this exploration. We begin to say, well, what can I do? And it's like, well, maybe meditation would work. So we learn meditation. We learn stillness. We learn contemplation. We get quiet in this stuff. It's a juicy, juicy place. Now, some people get stuck here. There's not anything wrong with this. It's all about making our life work. And what happens is the desperation begins to drain away, but much of this particular phase is still about making it a better me. I got to have a better life, and I got to have a better me. And while we've moved from an unhappy and desperate dream to a happy dream, we're still dreaming. And I don't know about you, but what I want to do is wake up. I don't want to hold on to the good I've got if it's only something that has been contrived with my mind, because, my gosh, it's hard to keep up positive thinking all the time. It's hard to construct a world and police our thoughts so that they can never go anywhere negative. I want to be free from that contraption in my mind. I don't want that bear trap. And so the final stage is awakening to who we are. Awakening from all of that. I can remember I used to hear that positive was a detachment or negative was an attachment. And I thought, that can't be true. Positive can't be an attachment. Well, it really is. It's okay. I mean, there's not anything morally wrong with anything we do. I mean, if I'm considering that we're basically moral people, and I'm saying there's not anything morally wrong with creating a happy dream, of having fantasy scenarios in our mind. We want to wake up. That is not going to get us there. We can't wake up by creating a positive scenario. There's something bigger. We can't run from anything. There can't be anything that we say we want to avoid. We have to be fully and radically present with every thought, with every feeling, with everything. When we awaken, we begin to identify with our true self, not our personality. I can remember one time I was talking about not identifying with my personality, and somebody walked up and said, "But you have a good personality." And it's like, oh, no, that's not the kind of personality I'm talking about. I'm talking about the story of Anne Sermons Gillis and the life that is consumed with making that okay, with making everything right, with controlling the external events so that they meet my approval. That's what the personality I'm talking about. What it takes is not fixing in order to be who we are. It takes a realization. In our culture, women are trained to dress well. They're trained to look good, somewhat objects of sex objects, so to speak. Men are often success objects, but women want to look good. And we have to look young, and we have to look a certain way. But some people, and we basically try, don't want to stink when we leave the house. Some people, we all try to look good in some extent to fit into a culture. However, some women are obsessed with how they look. They would never go out without any makeup. Their clothes are perfect. Maybe they got to have plenty of bling. Whatever their style is, they've got to meet that all the time. And can you imagine a woman that has that? What do you think motivates that? The belief that she's ugly? The belief that she's not valuable? There's something that motivates this drivenness to appear perfect. But what happens when she wakes up? When there's something of value within her that rises forth and says, enough. You already are at Unity of North Houston. You can't do anything to your physical body to make you any better. And she wakes up and it's like this peace, not, I'm such a great person. It's just like, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And all of a sudden, she doesn't have to wear 10 shades of makeup to go out of the house. She's okay just leaving the house and just letting it go. It's a realization. She has realized something. She didn't fix anything. She realized something. That's what made her wake up. She realized something. But I will tell you there is more work, because what she did was she woke up from the idea that the personality she thought she was not okay, to thinking that her personality of who she was okay. So there's still work to do to know who she really is. Not that she thinks she's an okay Jane Doe, but to know that she is spirit. She has to awaken. We have to awaken beyond the name and who we are with our physical body. I'd like to end with the story of the rainmaker. There was a village. It was dry, hadn't rained for a very long time. The crops were failing. They heard about a rainmaker, and this rainmaker was always successful. He could make it rain. So they did their drums, and they got this next village, and the communication went around, and the rainmaker got the message, and the rainmaker came to the village. And so they said, well, we've got this special hut for you over here, this teepee. We'll let you be over there, and you do what it is you need to get the rain going, and every day we'll leave food out for you to partake of, so you won't starve. But we're not going to bother you at all, because we're serious about this. We really need rain. So he goes in the teepee, and they hear all this, they're screaming and yelling and all this stuff, and this goes on for like 3 days. The guy never even goes out and gets his food. On the 3rd day, it pours rain. And the townspeople are so excited, and they jump up and down, and they're so thrilled. He comes out, and they said, oh, thank you so much. Could you just give us a little hint, how you did that? I mean, maybe we don't need some of that in the future. Maybe we could do it ourselves. And he goes, tell us about this rain ceremony. He said, I never got to the ceremony. He said, what I did was I went inside and cleared out everything in me because I wasn't pure enough to start this ceremony, so I cleaned out all the garbage. But when I cleaned out the garbage, the rain started. And this is a story of us. When we live on the inside, our problems disappear. Our problems disappear, but not because the events on the outside disappear. Our problems disappear because the mechanisms that creates problems out of every external scenario and internal scenario disappears. We are the rainmaker. And when we do the work that we do is not the work of fixing ourselves, it is the work of transcendence. As I said in the beginning, it is getting rid of the part of us that has to be protected, the wounded part of us. It's living with who we are. I ask you, when we started, for you to think of yourself as the happiest person that anyone has ever met. That in this very moment, you have the power and the freedom to be the happiest person that anyone has ever met. Thank you very much.